Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another interview. I am JB and joining me is Sophie.
Hey.
We have Kaila. And the special guest who'll be interviewing today is Jordana Arkin. Thank you so much for joining.
Hi, everyone.
So thank you so much. It's absolutely incredible to have you here. Without a doubt, the people watching this will probably recognize your name from a multitude of things, but I suppose specifically for this podcast, it will be in the credits of What's New Scooby Doo. You wrote 2 incredible episodes, but I kind of want to
Thank you.
kind of get to know you a bit. You kind of go to the start of your career and then kind of build up an idea of what led to Scooby Doo, and of course, a little bit after as well. So just looking through IMDb, I can see that your career as a writer specifically started in 1993. But before that, what kind of inspired you to go down that route?
I got lucky. I knew I did an internship at Paramount, and I knew I wanted to be a TV writer, but I had no idea how to get into that side. And I was doing some research at the library when people did research at libraries. And I was standing in line at the copy machine, and I met a guy who, just friendly, we're just talking. And I go, "What do you do?" And he said he worked in advertising, but did freelance for Hanna-Barbera. And I thought, oh, that's writing, animation's writing, and script writing. So I said, well, I'll make you a deal. I'm having a Valentine's Day party to hook up my friends because he was single and I had my boyfriend. I said, I'll invite you to my party and hopefully you'll hook up and you can mentor me through an animation script. And he's like, deal. So he did that. And at one point, there was a cattle call of writers for a show for Hanna-Barbera. And he couldn't do it. So he gave them, he liked the script that we worked on together. He gave them my name and I was called in for this cattle call. And there were like 15 scripts to give out and maybe 25 people. I'm like, oh, those are pretty good odds. I'm going to make this happen. And this is my first time. And I had a pitch over the phone to the showrunner. And I was sweating. I was so nervous. I had never pitched before. And pitching on a phone when you can't see reactions is so hard. And the guy's like, okay, calm down. You're okay. He goes, I like, there's something here. Why don't you take the weekend, work on it? It was a Friday, work on it. And then I'll talk to you Tuesday. I'm like, okay. Or Monday morning, I think, Monday morning. Okay. So I got myself together, pitched it. And he's like, okay, I'm going to buy that one. And that was my first sale. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And they were like these wraparounds. It was a show that had like live action wraparounds around the animation. So it really was live action. It wasn't animation for Hanna-Barbera. It was kind of different. And anyway, that I did a decent job and I wrote 7 of them. They just kept having me come back. And I used that to get an agent. And then that was like sort of the beginning of my career. So I just got super lucky meeting this person. And that's how that happened. Jennifer Aniston was in my episode. Yeah, I was like, wow, she's good. Why isn't she doing more? That was right before Friends.
Wow, that is an incredible story.
Yeah, it's kind of wild.
So were there any specific writers or any shows that you watched before your career started that influenced you?
I honestly, in animation, Hanna-Barbera was it for me. The Jetsons was my favorite show ever, Flintstones, because they were more like sitcoms, and I'm a little bit more of a sitcom person, Brady Bunch and all that. That's what I grew up on. So I was obsessed. I used to plug in a microphone I would record the Brady Bunch episodes, plug a microphone into my VCR, and redub the dialogue to what I thought how people talk. and because I'm like, this is not how people talk. And with friends, we would do our own videos. So I realized maybe that's the way I should go. So those were my biggest influences. And, animation's great because it just has you can do anything, you're not stuck in the living room you know. So I kind of do both. I actually, because I caught a break with Hanna-Barbera, people would take my calls in animation. I just randomly called story. I would look at the name of the story editor on the show. They're really just guys sitting in their offices by themselves writing scripts, and they would take my call and they would talk to me and give me advice, or maybe go, I don't have any freelance episodes, but so-and-so might. And that's how I built my career. I just, made these random calls and stuff. So it really, and I'm still friends with all those people practically. I'm still in touch with that guy I met at the library, like Facebook helps, but it's amazing. And they can't believe I'm still working, that I've still managed to do it, because so many people have gotten out of the business in the time, but I am still doing it because I've been fortunate and I make good relationships with people, that I keep them up, and people call me, for work.
As we've mentioned before, you've written for live action and animated projects. What do you feel is the difference between writing for these mediums?
I always tell people, because they do ask me, I'm like, I'm a storyteller, so I don't really care whether it's live action or animation. I'm just telling a story, it's character-driven story. I'm not great at the like Looney Tunes wouldn't be my thing, that when it's just all action like that. That's, I worked on a show called Star versus the Forces of Evil for Disney Channel, and I would just like write monster fight, let them kind of figure out the fight, and I'm more, a little bit more dialogue oriented. So sometimes live action's easier. It's easier for me, but I don't necessarily like it better because I like the freedom of animation too. It depends on what the show's about. I have to find myself in the show that I'm working on, because going back to Scooby Doo, when I started working on it, I thought, ooh, the mystery part of it and the chasing, that's not really what I do. So I'm like, maybe if I fill it with a lot of jokes, they won't notice that I don't know. I'm not really good at that part. And they said, George has said to me, you put a lot of jokes in here. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, I think we're going to start doing that from now on. We're going to put more jokes in the show. And I was like, yeah. So I sometimes do that when I'm working on an action thing. I try to like camouflage my weaknesses with jokes.
That is absolutely incredible. I really love that, because I kind of feel like what you said speaks to me on so many levels, where you said, I'm a storyteller first and foremost. So whether that be animation or live action, it's the same story. And I kind of feel like with the way animation can sometimes be treated by people, that's the best way to approach it. It's a completely legitimate medium that can tell some really hard-hitting stories. But from your perspective as a writer, does it ever change your methodology at all, knowing this is going to be in live action? I know what the set kind of looks like. I know what the characters, the actors are going to sound like, and what their dynamic is on screen together, versus once this has left the writing room, it's in the hands of animators. Like, is there any extra trepidation in that? The difference being with animation is you may not know what it's going to end up looking like.
Yeah, I mean, when the first animatics come back, you're just like, whoa, that is not what you get in live action. You go to the run through, and yeah, it's awkward, and maybe the jokes aren't, hitting, but you could fix that easily. With animation, you're like, you don't know if it's good or bad. Like, did they just not get the vision of what you had in mind and you need to work on that? Or is it didn't work, So it's much scarier. I mean, I think animation is much harder to write personally, and I think it should pay a lot more than it does because of that reason. But animation primarily is in a different union, and it's not really, they don't cover cost of living raises and stuff very much. I don't know. The rates have not gone up since I started that much. Some have even gone down.
No, it's like there's so many weird stuff that happens with animation. So, for instance, a couple of months ago, I mentioned this prior on another episode, we were interviewing the creator of the Hex Girls characters, and he was kind of saying, oh, but beyond Witch's Ghost, that's kind of it. That's the only residuals we see. Whereas there's been so many instances where the Hex Girls have been used for merch, and it kind of, that doesn't really affect him somewhat. But also, being quite heavy in the Doctor Who fandom, there's been in situations where main Doctor Who characters can't be used because the writer owns the rights to those characters. And so kind of two ends of the spectrum, but it's so interesting to find out how some places deal with what writers do in different
I know.
mediums.
It is crazy. Well, that's the thing. If you write a song in animation, you get those residuals. I wrote one of the Hex Girls songs in my episode. And I just the lyrics, and they did the music. And that's been nice, we get those little BMI checks, that's been, but live action is much more lucrative. I there's no way I can deny that, except with one exception. I did a show called, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm spacing the name. Totally Spies. Thank you. Totally Spies. 2 episodes. It's in the French Union. The SACD is a French union. I had to join it. And I didn't join it right away because the packet came to me, it was all in French. And I couldn't read it, so I didn't really do it. And then I ran into through Facebook, to save my life, the story editor. I said to him, are we supposed to get residuals? Somehow they paid us less up front saying we'd get residuals. And I thought it was just a plot. And so I didn't really take note of it. And then I met him and he goes, oh no, you should fill out the paperwork. And it was tens of thousands. I mean, it was crazy because it had all piled up over the years. And that was the only time in animation that if you get if you work for a foreign company, sometimes they have residuals for animation.
It's so interesting. Just doing all this is like kind of
crazy.
Enriched our knowledge to such an extent where before we recorded episode 1, I was personally in a situation where I didn't know what went on behind the scenes. I was kind of like, okay, like I guess it's all done in a certain way. And then by the end of it, you kind of get a new insight to things. And so when it comes to What's New Scooby Doo, it's so surreal that, I remember running home from school and switching on the TV because the episode of What's New Scooby Doo would be on. And now to get further insight on that is absolutely incredible. And
cool.
Guess you mentioned, I guess, how you started, finding jobs and getting work. But in terms of What's New Scooby Doo, before working on that show, how familiar were you with the Scooby Doo franchise overall?
I was just a big fan. I knew the show, it definitely helps when you're not just researching it for the job, when you actually were somebody who watched it. So I was pretty familiar with it. I don't remember how I got in the door with it. I think I knew I had interviewed with some of the execs beforehand for a different job. That often happens, is that you kind of interview for a different job, and then when something comes up, they call you in. I did animation for Disney. I wrote a pilot for them, and it just kind of started building my career and reputation. I don't remember what year it was, so I don't really remember what I was doing at the time. But I met with George Doty, who I know you talked to, and Ed Sherlock. I love both of them. We just really clicked in there. And I did pitch the first episode, was my story. And my husband is a model maker. He makes miniatures and special effects, and he's into all this stuff. So of course I'm like, help, this is a mystery. And so we kind of bounced ideas off each other, and he kind of helped me a little bit, and came up with this kind of crazy story for, he's a big Star Wars fan. So I called it The Vampire Strikes Back for him.
Oh.
And it was great. It was fun. And in fact, that episode, I don't know if you remember when you were watching, but the answer of who the villain was an online contest.
You see, it's so weird. I have vivid memories of that. Like, I remember you started on the TV, it would cut off before the unmasking, but then I think it promoed, like, it was like, if you want to join in on this, go to and there was like a website link, and you could win like I don't know what
The
you want.
DVD, I think you went.
But every time I've mentioned it to someone in like America and Canada, they don't know what I'm on about. So I don't
No,
know if it
it's
was
true.
a UK thing or something.
No, it's true.
But
No,
I
they just
distinctly
forgot because
remember it.
that was true.
And
I
I think they
remember
got
that
like
because I'm like, I know the
DeLisle to
answer.
like promo it, like Jeepers, go to this like link in the description. Like there was like an actual a whole different slideshow for it. It was so bizarre, but it was they did like a similar thing, and I think it was maybe a tie-in at the time. I remember stuff like that on like Lilo and Stitch, where you could make an alien and it could maybe be on
Oh,
the
that's
show one
funny.
day. There were so many like tie-ins that they did back then, but I kind of feel like maybe some people just got shifted into an alternate reality at some stage. I know some people
Yeah.
don't remember it. It's crazy.
I had done another show for Warner Brothers Animation called Mucha Lucha. So that might have been part of it. That was about Mexican mass wrestling.
Hmm.
And I was like, what do I know about that? And so my agent at the time, he's still my agent, but now he's my manager, but my agent at the time, he goes, I got you this episode of, this mass wrestling. I go, and he goes, you can go downtown and watch it live, and I go, oh, you're taking me. You're going with me. You got me into this. You're going with me. So I've worked on a lot of things that I didn't know anything about, and had to learn. Like I write video games too on this, that's sort of almost a side career mostly for Activision. And they're mostly about comedy. They're all comedies, but they're movies. Kung Fu Panda was my first game, and Madagascar and all those games. And, when I wrote for How to Train Your Dragon, I'm like, Vikings? Now I got to learn about Vikings? So you're sort of forever a student and in school. And when you're, working on any show that exists already, you have to watch, as many as you can. Now it's easy. Like when I started, finding things were a lot harder. And there was a whole underground to get scripts from shows and, trading and all kinds of stuff, or buying them from stores. Like yeah. It's so much easier to write now, honestly, because like research, I don't have to go to a library. I just research everything. So I think it's made me a better writer because I have instant access. Because say you want to write a line that's like kind of a cliche and you want to put your own spin on it. You're like, okay, I need the exact wording of the cliche so I can spin it. And then you look it up and you're like, okay, I get it. But I wrote for Nickelodeon, Hey Arnold, a couple of Hey Arnolds and Angry Beavers. And so I definitely had my hand in animation. And I was at the same time doing Saved by the Bell kind of stuff. And I even submitted to South Park. They had like kind of an open call of like, you could submit a paragraph and, or three, ideas or something. And they had these retreats that you would go to and they would pay you to come in for the whole day and stuff. And I did that. They picked mine and worked on an episode with them. So they liked that I was doing Saved by the Bell in South Park. Like that's my whole career. I was doing Will and Grace. That's it. So I did this in 2005. Will and Grace and Scooby Doo at the same time, which is crazy. And I love both. I like nothing. I love doing anything. Like there's definitely things that are more thrilling than others, but I'm telling stories, I'm writing, I'm making a living doing, I really like comedy because I want to make myself laugh all day, If I read a good joke, I'm like, yes, there's no better feeling.
That actually is so crazy. And I guess to kind of gain a better picture of Scooby-Doo, I suppose, Kayla, maybe your next question has perhaps been answered. So, Sophie, do you want to ask yours if that's okay?
Yeah, sure. Either Rolf writing for or prior experience in the franchise, was there a particular member of Mystery Inc. that you were most excited to write for?
Oh, definitely Velma.
Mm.
Yeah. My favorite line in the episode, like that, when she was in the wedding dress, we cut to her being in the wedding dress, and she's like, my mother would have a heart attack. The fact that they kept that in, I just, that's my favorite line in the whole thing. But I actually, they like my Daphne because I gave her more jokes than she usually has and try to, I did try to boost her the female characters and in it on purpose because I like them.
Yeah, and it's so amazing because you wrote for Velma, Daphne, both very strong female characters. But I think in terms of like the female characters outside of the main Mystery Inc. gang, the Hex Girls are so popular and so iconic. And I guess my question to that end would be, when writing for the Hex Girls, was it a situation where you were kind of given a brief and you understood their characters and what they would do, or did you refer back to kind of the source material of The Witch's Ghost and stuff like that?
Yeah, I went back and watched. There wasn't a ton. They weren't used a lot, I don't think, at least at that time. So I just took what I could from that. And I just like got inspired for the song, I thought it should be kind of gothy, dark, but kind of funny at the same time, So I was glad that it worked. Yeah, it was really get excited.
I think at the time it was only the third appearance of the Hex Girls, I believe. Maybe like I can be correctly wrong, but I think very early on for the Hex Girls. And I know you said before that you pitched the idea for that first episode, but was there anything that was changed or perhaps inferred by Warner Brothers or anything like that? For example,
I'm sure George and Ed twisted it and stuff like that. I just had probably a more general idea because, the story editors obviously know the show inside and out, and they know the direction they want to go in and all that. So I'm sure there was a lot of input and twisting around, from them. But they did give me a little bit more freedom, with the script than I expected. And, like I said, kept the jokes, and that's nice. That doesn't always happen. They were great. I loved working with them.
Yeah, so you mentioned how you wrote one of the Hex Girls' most catchiest songs, I would say.
Oh, thank you.
What was that experience like writing for them?
No, it was just fun. It's great when you get your assignment is to, write a song for these animated goth girls. You're like, okay, what does that mean? And still make it kid friendly-ish and, all that. So I just kind of put my head there, and that's the first thing that came to my mind. I'm like, better dead than wed, right? Whatever. And it just went from there.
So to what extent did you need to collaborate with the composer, Rich Dickerson, for the writing?
Yeah, I didn't. They just gave him some of the lyrics, and then he does his magic. I got to go. I went to the recording with the actors. That was super cool to meet Casey Kasem, all these people. At that time I was Mindy Cohn. Yeah, that was amazing. That was awesome. I got them to sign the script.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
But I do have an even more amazing story about that time. So, well, after I did the second episode, I know we're not at Farmed and Dangerous yet, but Farmed and Dangerous was the story they gave to me. And after I wrote the script, but before the production, they called me up and they go, you have to meet with Joe Barbera and pitch it to him. And I'm like, it's already written. Like, what do you, they go, yeah, he likes to be involved still. I'm like, see, he's like his 90s at that point. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, all right. So I'm all excited, because I'm just like, oh, I've always wanted to be able to talk to him. And so I go in there, and he's in a wheelchair, whatever, his nurse is like with him, and they wheel him out, and he starts talking to me, and then he's like, what's your story about? And I tell him about the farmer and multicolored popcorn and this and that. And he's just like, that's the stupidest story I've ever heard in my life. or dumbest story, whatever. And I was like, it's the story. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And with the puppies, and I mean, it was part of my fault too. It was like, it was a hard story to pitch. There's puppies and multicolored popcorn. I mean, I'm sure I made it sound like it didn't make any sense. And and I was like, wow, Joe Bear just said that to me. You know, like, what am I saying? I was just like, oh, well. And then he kind of nodded off because he's older, you know, whatever. And then his nurse said to me, they go, you know, do you have anything that you want him to sign or anything? And I'm like, you mean like this Jetson cell that I have in my purse? And so you can see signature. So yeah, I like had a purse and and it was not framed, you know, I just pulled it out and I'm like, here. So I got him to sign my Jetson cell and an episode. Oh, I think this is my Scooby Doo episode. Yeah, I got him to sign one, not for my husband. So that was cool.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a trip. That whole thing, I was like, wow, that was amazing.
Wow, that's incredible.
I know, right?
Yeah. Do you recall any concepts for the episode or songs in it that ended up being scrapped or unused?
No, that I mean, I didn't write the whole song. I think he added lyrics to it and filled it out. I just, you know, came up with the idea, wrote a portion of it, you know, and that was it. But yeah, no, that I know that's unusual.
As we
I'm
mentioned,
sure.
the Hex Girls were in this episode. Did you find you enjoyed writing for any particular member of the Hex Girl?
No, I, you know, I think they were just kind of reacting to our characters. So whoever, yeah.
See, that's so incredible. And the Hex Girls are still going absolutely strong. And I guess, as you said, it's been a while since you worked on Scooby Doo. You've gone on to do other things, but I guess as being a Hex Girls writer, I kind of wanted to get your gauge on the kind of current state of things. You know, it's kind of just been revealed that we had a Scooby Doo movie starring the Hex Girls that was cancelled, kind of unceremoniously. And it's like, kind of, what's your response, if any at all, to that kind of news?
Oh, that's a bummer. They should, if people really love it. I know one time somebody on Twitter contacted me and said, I'm dressing up as the Hex Girls for Halloween. Can I have the lyrics to the song? You know, but I didn't see it till like probably a year later or something. But yeah, I felt bad. I'm like, oh, sorry, but I don't have all the lyrics. I don't believe. I don't even have that. But I think it's cute that it has this cult following. I think they should definitely do it.
Yeah, there's like been so many like fan outcry even before that. Like, we need a Hex Girls movie or a Hex Girls TV show, and I just think,
why not?
That would be such a cool thing. It's almost like it's kind of it doesn't necessarily write itself, of course, but in terms of the characters, I think it'd be difficult to, I guess, mess that up in terms of the eyes of the fandom who are so in love with the characters. So, but I guess moving on now to, like you mentioned, Farmed and Dangerous. I wanted to kind of know, did you write that at a similar time to the Hex Girls episode, or was it as a, kind of closer to that season 3 premiere date?
Yeah, I think it was maybe a year later. Yeah. Because I only worked with Ed on that. George wasn't there at that time. I believe, or George was transitioning out of there. But yeah, I think it was that if my memory serves, it was about a year later. I feel like I was doing Kung Fu Panda around then. So I don't know the date of that, but it's hard. I've had, a freelance life. Usually I'm like on staff on a show for a year or two, then I'm in development for a year, then I'm back on a show, so and when I do freelance, I'm often doing three at the same time. I don't know why. They just come in threes. I've noticed that. And in fact, I don't feel like I'm doing enough if I'm not juggling 3. And then once it hits 4, I go crazy. I can't handle it. It's like 3. That's it.
So they gave you another episode of Scooby Doo to write because they said, we want you to write another one.
Yeah. I think they asked me, or I checked in with them, said, I'm not sure. Yeah. Yeah, they were really happy with how the first one turned out.
It's amazing. So, how did the writing process compare between the two episodes?
The first one was with George and Ed, so it's like more people have to agree on stuff. But I felt like I felt a little more involved in the first one, maybe the second one. I think I was busy too at that time. I think I had more time when I was doing the first one to be involved. So it was a little bit different. I think the second one changed a little bit more in the process. Those puppies were cute though. Those were and I have a young son, well, not anymore, but he was then, and it was fun to work on something for him. Sometimes I work on things that weren't for him. So that was really cool.
After writing Farmed and Dangerous, were there ever any talks to write any future episodes?
I don't think so. I feel like that was the last season of it? I'm not that they produced at that time. It might have been. So no. They take a long time to go through. The process is really long. When I was working at Disney and we developed Star vs. Force of Evil, we were in development for a year and 4 months on the show before it got picked up. So, and it just takes takes a long time. That was the thing. Coming from sitcom where it's just all immediate. I'm like, oh my God, this stuff takes a year or two. So that's the difference. The process is really slow.
Well, you shared some awesome stories with us, but do you have a favorite memory from working on What's New Scooby Doo?
I would say going to the voice recording and watching Frank Welker, watching them do the voices and meeting all of them was probably the highlight, and meeting Joe Barbera. I did say to Joe Barbera, I said, what I loved, what you did with the Jetsons is you showed people that the future is cool. Most people just show an apocalyptic future for, I go, you made it look cool and people would want to get older and grow up and live in this world. And thank you for that.
I mean, it was so iconic, and even like now you see so many like posts in comparison, like technology that there was in the Jetsons that they have now.
Unbelievable.
Like cleaning robot, there's the Roomba, Zoom conferences. It's so crazy to think that maybe one day we could be whizzing around in airships and stuff. It is crazy. And what's even crazier is, of course, you in your career, you've been no stranger in making things that last the test of time, of course. But considering the fact that this is the year that What's New Scooby-Doo celebrates the 21st anniversary, what's your response to the fact that so many people love it after this time and no doubt will continue to love it so far into the future?
I think what people love about it is, like, there's definitely something comfortable about like this group of friends who are so different, but they work together to solve these things, and it's just light, fun, humor, the mystery. I mean, you're not really trying, the mystery part is, sort of secondary to the, you feel like you're watching Friends. It's like a version of Friends, right? Only with Scooby and a mystery to solve.
Absolutely.
But I think that's why, like, Friends is like the number one show on and reruns and stuff. And I think it's the same kind of thing. It's that friendship, that group, which I think is sort of magical that they put together.
Definitely a close-knit group without a doubt. And the fact that, again, like they kind of almost you have imagined behind the scenes that they go through so many things to kind of compromise around each other, but in a way that it doesn't compromise themselves as people. They always kind of come in and be consistent, which is amazing. And I guess we've spoken a little bit about the Jetsons, which is kind of fitting because I want to talk about the future and present day now. And so to that end, my last question before passing on to Kaila to wrap things up is, Are there any current projects that you're working on that have released recently that you can kind of share with us today at all?
Let's see. I mean, I can't talk about my current projects, but let's see. What can I talk about? Because right now I'm just pitching shows. I do family shows and kid shows, everything. I worked on Raven's Home, not that long ago. Yeah, it was in Fuller House was before that. But right now, yeah, I'm just pitching. There's a show with Lily Singh. The YouTube, yeah.
Superwoman.
Yeah, that will be coming out on YouTube. And it's animated. I wrote 2 episodes. And if you like my style from this episode, it's really my style. I really got to do my thing with these episodes. And it's called it's Unicorn Island. Why am I spacing the Mindful Adventures of Unicorn Island. I kept seeing the acronym and I'm like, wait. So yeah, the Mindful Adventures of Unicorn Island. And it's a kid show, and it's about, it's sponsored by Headspace, the meditation app. And it's teaching kids how to meditate and how to get through problems and stuff like that. And I'm telling you, as an adult, you're going to watch it and you're going to go, this will help me. Like, this is a great tip. Like, it's such a great show, but it's comedy first, action, adventure, like just craziness. We got to go really wild with it. And that'll be coming out. I worked on that last year, and that'll be coming out soon. And I'm really proud of that. I can't wait to see. I haven't seen anything from it, but I know what we wrote. I mean, I wrote an episode about my hair dryer, like I have a fancy hair dryer. And it's like a hair dryer monster. So, it's, yeah. I did stuff like that.
It's very exciting. And something I did want to share is that I think the way you viewed the Jetsons, that's such like a beautiful way to look at it. And I think I'm going to watch it differently now because, you look at that, it's such a
great
different perspective. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, great. Yeah, I know. We're living it, so much of it now.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need more of that. We need, I know they can't seem to get a live action version of that show, and I don't think they should, but they should have more positive shows about the future. I think people would love that.
Definitely, and I think you should write it. I think that would be amazing.
You're right. Should I? Yeah, my husband could probably come up with the things that would happen in the future. He's really clever that way.
Yes, and speaking of the future, what's the best place people can keep up with your work?
Usually IMDB, which isn't accurate, no matter how much you try to get things on and off of there. But I guess through Twitter, I check it out every now and then. People could DM me, if and on Facebook, and as long as they're not crazy. I'm so nice, because I am, I feel for people, and I they'll ask me questions about shows I worked on, and if I accept them, then I'm trapped sometimes in a situation. But that's why I guess Twitter's better for that. If they want to ask me any questions, that's great. I'm happy to answer anything, and encourage more women to write animation. It's still, a male-dominated field, but there are more women getting there, and it's great. We should be there.
I mean, that's such a nice message to just spread, especially now, because we are definitely close to the International Women's Day, and that's something that I figured, like, doing. I know it sounds kind of naive, but it really puts things into perspective. Researching for the show, when you go through IMDb and you look at all the names that have worked on some of the shows, and quite a lot of it, as you say, is that male-dominated thing. So it's an absolutely great message to spread today. So I guess that's all of the questions that we had lined up for you today. I mean, I definitely am looking forward to keeping up with your work, like the Lily Singh project in particular as well. It just seems so interesting because I remember watching like years and years ago Lily Singh's skits because she would always do like impersonations of her Indian parents, and it reminded me so much of my mum. Like whenever you step out of line, the slipper comes out, and it's like, ah,
Ah,
yes, I've been there, I've been there. But thank
yeah,
you so
she's
much.
great. In the show, I think it's gonna be like a quiet little thing that comes up. People are gonna start watching it. I don't know. It's so. I'm just from the scripts. I can only go by the scripts. I don't know what it looks like or how it's turning out, but it should be a really cute show and really entertaining for not just kids. We didn't, I had an animated pilot I wrote for Nickelodeon for preschool, and it's like, that's really hard. That's the hardest thing you could possibly do is preschool. But I'm like, I still have to, give it a little bit of my stuff, in there and make it so adults would be watching it with their kids going, oh, I'm enjoying this too. Like Peppa Pig or something, like, oh, this is cute. I don't know if you've seen Bluey. I checked that out. That show is adorable. Like I'm laughing out loud at a preschool show, and so you could write anything, any genre, any age group. You just have to find where you fit in, like if you're writing it. And don't give up. Persistence over everything. You just have to be able to know your craft, and when you get that opportunity, that you're ready for it.
That is amazing. And I mean, that's the perfect way, that perfect vibe to kind of finish on. Let's hope that the future looks more like the Jetsons and less like the Hunger
Yes.
Games or whatever
Yes.
post-apocalyptic thing is going on at the moment. I have not entered that universe for years and years, so that's probably an outdated reference at this point. But thank you so much for all the time you've given us today, because you have been incredibly generous with it, and for all the incredible stories that you've showed, and the signatures as well. It's like so many timeless timepieces. It's just such a privilege to see. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for contacting me, and good luck with your show. And I'll try to bring people there and to check it out.
Well, thank you so, so much. And of course, I couldn't do this without our amazing collaborators here today. So for people watching, please make sure to follow Sophie at Scooby Doo for live. Amazing Scooby Doo art. Like, there's so many things that I'm like, every day I refrain from begging her to start an Etsy shop. It's like, please, I will go broke. I will sell all the clothes that I've got, and I will pay for all that stuff. So please follow Sophie in the description. And I'd be lost without keeping up to date with all of Kayla's Scooby-Doo reviews and Scooby-Doo news at Scooby in the Know. So I'm going to leave all of that in the description down below, and hopefully that's useful to people, because it's definitely useful to me. So thank you so much to everyone for watching. And if you do want to see more, then please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.